The content in this video is for general educational use. It does not represent political opinions or judgments about any country, culture, or government. Information is based on publicly available sources and may be summarized or simplified. Viewers should verify details through multiple sources.
You know, when you see the news about Ukraine, the images are almost always of devastation, of defense, of the front lines. And of course, that's a huge part of the reality. But it's not the whole picture. Beyond the headlines, there's this other, incredibly complex story unfolding, one about resilience, high-tech innovation, and some really unexpected ripple effects. So let's dive into that.
First, let's just ground ourselves in the hard numbers, because they are staggering. According to the IMF, the invasion has just wiped out a quarter of Ukraine's entire economic output. That's a figure that really puts the daily struggle into a brutally clear perspective.
And you know that economic hit is directly tied to physical destruction. Recent attacks have just hammered the country's energy grid, knocking out about half of its ability to generate electricity. This isn't just some inconvenience. We're talking about a threat to the country's basic ability to function.
But, and this is a huge but, out of that very real, very physical destruction, a powerful counter-story has emerged. While Russia is busy attacking Ukraine's tangible assets, its buildings, its power plants, Ukraine is fighting back with an incredibly effective digital counteroffensive. And this right here really shows you exactly what that means. A physical government building? Well, it can be destroyed by a missile. And just like that, services grind to a halt. But with the Diia app, which is this amazing all-in-one digital government platform, those same services just keep on running. The state literally lives in the cloud, totally accessible from anywhere.
And look, this isn't just some PR talking point. A recent report from KPMG just nailed it. They said that Ukraine's level of digitalization completely contradicts that typical image we have of a helpless, war-torn state. It's really a story of years of investment in digital government paying off at the exact moment it was needed most.
And we are not talking about some small-scale experiment here. The scale is just massive. I mean, look at this chart. The Diia app has 20 million users, which is incredible on its own. But then you have platforms like Prozoro, the country's e-procurement system, saving $1 billion a year through transparent government contracts. This isn't a side project. It's a core pillar of how the country is surviving.
But get this, it's not just about keeping essential services running. It's about actively building the economy. Using that same Diia app, Ukraine now has the world's fastest business registration. You can literally start a business in 10 to 15 minutes. Just stop and think about that for a second. In the middle of an existential war, they're creating a hyper-efficient, business-friendly digital state. It's wild.
And this digital strength, it runs deep into the private sector too. Ukraine's IT industry was already a beast before the war, but its resilience has been nothing short of astonishing. When the invasion happened, the sector didn't just collapse, it adapted. 95% of IT contracts were kept, and software exports actually grew by 23% in the first half year of the war. It's become this crucial engine for both the economy and for military innovation.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second because this story doesn't just stop at Ukraine's borders. The war has sent massive shockwaves across the entire region, and to really understand them, we have to look at the data on what's been happening to its neighbors, especially Poland.
What you're seeing here is a map that shows the sheer scale of the refugee wave that poured into Poland right after the invasion. We're talking millions of people, creating one of the biggest and fastest migrations in modern European history. So a group of researchers wanted to figure out what was the actual precise impact of this.
Now, to do this, they used a really clever statistical method. It's called a shift-share instrument. But basically, here's what it does. It looks at where Ukrainian immigrants settled in the past to predict where the new wave of refugees would most likely go. This lets them separate the effects of the refugee influx itself from all the other economic and social things that were already happening in those areas. It's a way to get a really clean signal from all the noise.
And what they found is, well, it's complicated and full of surprises. So on one hand, politically, the areas that took in more refugees saw a bump in votes for far-right parties. But on the other hand, when they looked at the economy, there were no major negative effects on local jobs or wages. In fact, the refugee wave was linked to a big jump in new businesses being registered, and local government spending went up mostly on schools. It's a really mixed, unexpected picture.
So that brings us to the future. Because even while the fighting is still going on every single day, One of the biggest, most monumental tasks in modern history is already being planned: the actual reconstruction of Ukraine.
I mean, just think about that question. How on earth do you rebuild a nation while it's still under attack? The logistics, the money, the politics, the challenges are just immense. How do you even begin to lay the groundwork for a new future when the present is still so incredibly uncertain?
Well, the starting point is this number. A joint assessment from the World Bank, the UN, and others puts the price tag at $486 billion. That's just over the next 10 years. It's a sum so enormous that, let's be real, public money alone is never going to cover it.
So, the whole strategy really depends on attracting a ton of private investment, and the plan is basically a four-part strategy. First, align everything with EU standards to create a stable, predictable environment. Second, use guarantees from big international institutions to de-risk the investments. Third, push really hard on anti-corruption reforms and the rule of law. And finally, and this is so crucial, rebuild the social stuff, the schools, the housing, the hospitals, to give people a real reason to come home and rebuild their lives.
So as we pull all these threads together, it becomes incredibly clear that the story of wartime Ukraine isn't just one story. It's a nation of deep, powerful paradoxes, all existing at the exact same time.
On one hand, it's a physical battlefield facing just unbelievable destruction. And yet, at the same time, it is a world-leading digital innovator and a seriously resilient tech hub.
The war has created this devastating humanitarian crisis. But, as we saw in the data from Poland, that crisis has also become this unexpected catalyst for economic energy and political change, well beyond its own borders.
And finally, Ukraine is locked in this daily, brutal fight for its own survival. But at the same time, it's meticulously drawing up this detailed, incredibly ambitious blueprint for a modern European future.
Which really leaves us with this final thought. The story of Ukraine today tells us that the real question isn't just if it will survive. The more interesting question is what new kind of nation, more digital, more resilient, and more deeply connected to the world than ever before, is being forged right now in the fires of this war.